Releasing Trauma is sponsored by the Global Association for Trauma Recovery. The Global Association for Trauma Recovery is a social impact organization serving as a resource for survivors and their families, dedicated to facilitating change by spreading trauma-related awareness and thus creating a more trauma-informed world. Learn more at gaftr.org. Welcome to Releasing Trauma, a Survivor's Podcast. I am your host, Tracy Osborne. I am a survivor of emotional bullying, rape, sexual assault, domestic abuse, and grief. After losing my husband in 2019, I set off on a new adventure to help other women release their trauma and create a life they can cherish. Each week, I will feature a guest expert or a survivor to share their stories, tips, wisdom, and more. The goal is so that you can take away even just the smallest nugget of information you can use in your life right now to make a change, and to remind you that you're not alone. There is life after trauma, and you can move from victim to thriver and create a life you can cherish. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I am your host, Tracy Osborne. With me today is Emily Francis. We are going to talk about healing yourself whole. So Emily, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I am thrilled to have you. This is a great topic because, as trauma survivors, we definitely need to heal. And oftentimes we'll heal one part of us and not another part of us. And we need to heal all of us in order to move forward. So this is a great topic today.
Well, I could not agree more. And I feel like the place that I come in is the part that your body is holding those memories. And not enough people know how to tap into it to get that healing that we need, because we think all the time, well, if we go to as many therapists and we keep doing the cognitive therapy, and that is so valuable and important. But if you don't get down inside that body and work with your body to release those triggers and to release those frozen patterns, then you're always reaching.
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about this on the show all the time, and we'll get into this here in a minute, but we talk about, how trauma is trapped in our cells. It's not just in our heads. It's in every part of our being. Yes. So, we'll dive in here in just a second as to how we can heal that. But first, I would like to have you share a little bit about your story with us.
Okay. So my story, I have always loved the body. I've always been madly in love with muscles. So when I was young, I was a gymnast. I always worked out, but it never felt like, oh, I have to go do this. It was just my life. I was a gymnast lifelong and then college cheerleader. And when I was in 7th grade, only 13, my dad, who was my best friend in the world, my favorite human on the planet, went to go play tennis and couldn't come to the gym that day. And he always came on Saturdays. And he said, I'm going to go play a match. I'll see you after. And he died of a heart attack. And I never saw him again.
Oh,
and
man.
Not only did I never see him again, but we were given about 2 weeks to grieve. And then that door was shut. So it wasn't like we had free dialogue in our home anymore. It became, you were never allowed to ask questions or talk about him or bring him up. So all of a sudden I went from having my favorite person in the world to not only still waiting for him to come home, because I had convinced myself he was in Las Vegas in the witness protection program, because there was no coffin. There was no proof. There was no nothing. And even at the hospital, the doctor asked my mom if she wanted to see him, and she said no, because she knew that he wouldn't want her to see him like that after he passed. But for me as a child, it meant, so you're saying there's a chance, like something else happened. Nobody's telling me the truth. And it just, I didn't even see his grave until I was old enough to drive there myself, because she buried him in another state, because she felt like if she buried him anywhere near our home, she would never get me out of the cemetery. So it was incredibly traumatic. And I dealt with it a little as a child. And I always tell parents, my God, get them therapy. Get your child in therapy, whatever trauma it is, put them in, but find a really good therapist before you start going down that game. Yeah. But I didn't deal with it. And so I became a wonderful drinker. I was really fantastic at what I knew how to do, which was party like the best of them. And when I turned 25, it no longer served me. And I couldn't drink anymore. It was like the hangovers were now in the time that I was drinking. And it was just really out of control. And I said to myself, like, you're so close to being at the point of no return. And so I took a year of sobriety. And in that year, the mask dropped and the crazy appeared. And all the things that I had been shoving down forever came up with a vengeance. And I had to make a decision. Do I work through it or do I go all the way down? And I worked hard for a lot of years and did a lot of different therapies. And I went anywhere and everywhere that people suggested, including I went to massage school. So at 27, I went to massage school and graduated with clinical and neuromuscular therapy. And my love of muscles became very different because what happened is when I placed my hands on people's bodies, I can communicate with the muscles. They just point me in the right direction. They tell me what's going on with the person to the point where I don't want to hear your story before you get on the table because I need to hear the story that your body wants to tell me and not the one that your mind has been repeating over and over that is open to interpretation. And so that became my work. And it's why I write books and why I am an advocate that you have to go through that body because the story that your body holds, I promise you, is not the same story that you have in your head. It's not. And so finding that out and working with that will integrate you and give you an opportunity to heal that I just don't feel like people have been given enough of.
No, because, we are told it's in our heads and to get over it, to let it go. It's been X number of years. It's time to move past it and forget about it. Or, use talk therapy. But, we're just not told enough that we need different modalities to heal different parts of us.
Exactly right. And we're also not taught. Like, I really wish that we could learn as youth coping skills, strategies, how our body reacts to trauma. Even this, like we were out to dinner with dear friends of ours this past week. And my husband bought all the kids cupcakes at the end of the night. And one of the kids didn't like his. And he came up and he said, before I say anything, who paid for this? And I looked at him and I go, please don't worry about that. If you don't like it, honey, don't eat it. It's not a problem. And he was like, no, if you guys paid for it, then I'm going to eat every bite of it. I'm not going to do, he like had this whole thing. And I looked at him and I was like, listen, buddy, you're way too young to be guilting yourself like that. Nobody's putting that pressure on you. It's flour. Nothing died for it. Like, you're fine. Throw it away. This is not a problem. This is the least thing you need to worry about. No guilt. Guilt will eat you alive and it'll start to build on itself. So please, do not feel guilty. Do not worry about this. This is what you have to shake off. But to a 9-year-old that's stressful, nobody sat there and said, even those parents are so calm and they're like, yeah, no. They're not enforcing this. But some people, they take different behavior patterns and they lace themselves up from the inside. And it just is part of who they are. And we blame the parents all the time or the teachers or wherever, but sometimes you are just that kid. I mean, sometimes you're a fearful kid, but not because you fell down the stairs. Sometimes you're afraid of heights, but nobody pushed you someplace. I mean, sometimes you come into this life with things that are still needing to be cleared. And so there are certain behavior patterns that isn't anybody's fault, but we have to catch them young and early so that we don't build on it, because guilt is so, it anchors itself inside the cells of the body, inside the tissues. I can feel a guilt body by the touch of your skin. It's a different texture. I can tell it with shame. It's a different texture. Your skin gives away more than you could possibly imagine to a trained touch.
That's fascinating because I've never heard that before, but I could see it. I know, stress and everything does different things to your body. So I could see how it would change it on a cellular structure.
I mean, let's put it like this. You see people that age so fast during a stressful time and all of a sudden their hair turns gray. That's a kidney deficiency. That's a deficiency in your gene. It's in your sexual vitality, who you are. And it comes in the form of gray hair. And in Chinese medicine, they have a liquid called shou qi, which means black-haired Mr. Man. And it's to help keep you young and vital, your life force. But here especially in America, we we kind of shoo off some of the Eastern philosophies that have been there 5,000 years longer than our allopathic medicine. And you don't realize people that are trained can tell a lot about you by how you stand, by how you look, by the symmetry on your face and your shoulders, knees, hips, feet. They can tell by the whites of your eyes and the color of your eyes. They can tell by the ridges in your fingernails. They can tell by the moons of your fingernails. They can tell by how soft your ears are. There are a million ways to look inside the body. So that's the cool thing, is that whatever's going on, your trick is to find the right person that studied what you need.
So how do we do that, though? I mean, if we don't really know what's going on, how do we find the right person?
Oh my gosh. Okay. This is a shameless plug because it's not even the book that I'm on here for, but I have to tell you, I wrote the book. I wrote the book, Whole Body Healing. And why? And this is exactly why. It's your resource manual. It is my research in your hands. I've saved you years of study, but it's called Whole Body Healing, Create Your Own Path to Physical, Emotional, Energetic, and Spiritual Wellness. And the reason I wrote that book is because, in my opinion, you have 4, not just body, mind, spirit. You have physical body, emotional body, energetic body, which we skip all the time, and spiritual body. And so in this book is those 4 sections with every practitioner. I am the host of the show All About Healing. I've been hosting it for 3 years. It plays in 165 countries. I have pulled in the best of the best. I know of which I speak in these areas of research and finding these fascinating people that do things that other people, I'm in the field. Not only am I in the field, my child was diagnosed with the autism spectrum, mild to moderate, at age 3, and they removed her diagnosis in full before she turned 5. And the developmental pediatrician looked at me and she goes, I need you to sit down. I need you to hear me when I say this, that this almost never happens in the world. And you need to claim your miracle and know that everything you're doing is working. But if you're not in those fields and you don't know that healing is actually possible, and I'm not saying that for autism spectrum, so do not freak out. I do think it is, but I think it depends on how early you get in there, what kind of intervention, what kind of side bending healings that are not in the mainstream. There's a lot to go there. So if you heard me on this and you want to email me directly, I will help you find your healing team. I will. I'm happy to. But don't freak out and get angry, because a lot of people, it elicits an anger response of like, no, I've been told that you can't get off of it. Well, guess what? I've been told that too, but I don't listen to that, because you don't get to decide what level of healing I get to have. And you definitely don't get to decide it for my child.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And listeners, we're going to have all her contact information and the links to her books down in the show notes, just like we always do. So don't worry about that. We'll make it easy for you. So what are some things that our listeners can do on their own to kind of start healing their bodies?
Okay, I sound like I'm shamelessly plugging, and I'm really not trying to, but I am, because this is the book that I came here for. The most recent book, and the reason that you're having me on your beautiful show, Healing Ourselves Whole, is for the work you do alone. It's the work you do without the therapist. It's the work you do without your friends. It's the work you do by yourself. And I hold your hand through the book as your body worker. I am not your guru. I'm not your therapist, but I am your friend and your guide inside your body. I take you down in there, but really, I also do what other people don't. And that's, I give you the power back. It's yours. And it always was. But I don't feel it. This is what I always say. Your ability to heal is entirely possible. Your ability to heal and do it alone is incredibly difficult, if not impossible. You need a team. Right. But I want to give you in this last book, because I call it my healing trilogy. So I have 3 books on healing. The Body Heals Itself, Whole Body Healing, and now Healing Ourselves Whole. And it goes in order. And the most recent, Healing Ourselves Whole, is how do you do that work on your own? And here's the other thing. Because the whole shameless plug and selling, I hate that part. So let me give you the other part. On my website, healingourselveswhole.com, you can go and download every single audio meditation, and you can download every journal. So if you want to skip for right now and decide to hang on, about buying the book, and I hope that you do decide to buy the book, but I still give you all the gems. So you can go through the meditations at no charge and see how it resonates with you. And then if you decide, you know what, I do do want to know more about this and I want to go deeper, I'm going to go buy the book. It's on audio now. It's fantastic. It's read by somebody else. And I have to tell you, listening to your book in somebody else's voice is the coolest thing ever. It's so cool because I'm listening to it. I'm like, oh, that's good. Oh my God, I wrote it. Like, it's so crazy.
That's funny.
Like, oh, wow. Cause I don't I'm getting to listen to it like a listener, not the writer. And it's really neat, but I'm incredibly proud of the narrator's name is Stina Nielsen, and she was Goodreads Reader of the Year last year. And I didn't know that, but I started listening to all the different Highbridge audio narrators, and I chose her instead of them coming to me and saying, here's your two to choose from. I went ahead and said, I found her. I really like her. What are the chances? And she said, yes. So she did the book. I'm super proud of it, but go to it, see how it feels, try it on for free first. Go to the website, download the journals, listen to the meditations, get a taste for what I'm talking about with how to get into your own self to get some release going.
Can you give us kind of a synopsis of what's in the book? What our listeners will find in there?
Yes, I am the creator of something called the Somatic Emotion Chart. Somatic is a fancy word for body. Okay, so your body emotions, because all those feeling wheels and emotion wheels that have so many things to choose from don't apply to the body. So from my 20 years of body work and my 25 years of study into anatomy and physiology, I know what the body stores, and there are very limited emotions. So I have 4 heavy emotions, which is trauma, shame, guilt, and grief. And then you have an action bridge, which is suppress, which keeps you on the heavy side, process, and release, which takes you to the fabulous 4 emotions. And when I say this is what your body's holding, this is what your muscles, your fascia, the blood and plasma, the cellular memory, it's all in there. That's where we're going. So we surf through the blood and find the place in the muscle memory. But the 4 fabulous emotions are happy, joy, connected, empowered. And not enough emphasis is put on the high side of healing because we constantly talk about trauma and because you have to go through the deep first. But there is a whole other side. And to me, the muscle memory holds trauma the same way the muscle memory holds joy. And I'm going to give you an example, if I may. Let's say you hear a song on the radio and it takes you back to 16, you're in your partner's car and you're whatever it is, like maybe they're a smoker and you can smell the smoke. Maybe they have a certain cologne or perfume, whatever it is. All of a sudden your visceral reaction, your senses kick in and you're back in time. Those muscle memory gates, the dopamine receptors, all of that just opened up and gave you the same effect that happens when you catch into the triggers of trauma. So when you're triggered and you feel this release and you're back in that space in trauma, you can also do it with the physiology of joy inside the body. And what happens when you trigger in the good side? You double it, you triple it, you quadruple it. And that's what we work with. And I learned something even better. I learned this from Dawson Church, who's a doctor of psychology, and he's the author of Bliss Brain. And when I started in on I've decided that your biggest, bravest, boldest move is to be able to sit still when joy comes around and not couple it with catastrophe, fearful thoughts. Can you sit still and enjoy when joy comes up? And be there. And then he said, if you can sit in that space for 20 seconds or longer, the neural pathways of the brain actually change. They widen and they strengthen. So my challenge to people now is, can you be brave enough when you feel the happiness, when you feel the joy wash over, to not run from it and let yourself experience it without thinking, oh my God, I did it now. Trauma's just around the corner. I tripped the switch. It's coming. Right?
Right. Yeah, get rid of that doomsday thinking.
Yes. And we all do it. I mean, we're conditioned to, but life goes up and down. It's going to kick your ass again. And it's going to be incredible again. It's going to do this because it's life, but not because you brought it on, because you experienced the feeling of happy.
I like that. I don't think we let ourselves feel happy nearly enough.
I don't either. I actually think it's like when I do that, I still fight with myself. I still think, okay, Emily, you are the one talking about this. You're feeling the happiness. Let yourself feel it and challenge yourself. to just stay there as long as
Right.
it's willing to visit. But it's scary. It's brave. It's your bold move to feel the joy and the happy when it comes. And happy and joy are not exactly the same, which is why they're two separate somatic emotions, because happy is more in the present. It builds on itself enough to where you recognize when it comes, but joy settles deeply physiologically inside the body into that muscle memory space where you can trigger and open up, and it actually affects the different chemical responses within your body, the way that trauma does with triggers.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Well, Emily, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me today. This has been amazing.
Thank you.
What is your website? How can people reach you?
People can go to healingourselveswhole.com, healingourselveswhole.com. And all of those resources are free. And you just go to audio and you go to journals and download them. And I do hope you buy the book, of course, but it's not the reason that I wrote the book. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You had a message. You need to get that message out to people, and the book is the best way to do that.
Yes.
Yep, I completely agree. And listeners, like I said before, and like I say all the time, we will have all her information in the show notes. Excuse me, just go to releasingtraumapodcast.com if you're listening from one of our partner stations, and pull up Emily's show. All her contact information will be there. Emily, thank you again for coming on the show and talking with us today. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And listeners, thank you as always for tuning in. We'll talk to you in the next show.